Welcome to another CEO Wisdom Pod. We have Angie Schwab with us. She's founder and CEO at Easy Research Solutions. She's all about digital protocols, AI and automation powered medical writing. Super interesting niche. She's in Minneapolis. I'm in Oaxaca, Mexico. And today we're going to talk about her company. It's not her first company. So there was a couple before that, including Ashford Wellness and so forth. So it's going to be a fun podcast today. This one is brought to you by podpire.com. That is my podcasting agency. If you want to start, scale, and monetize a podcast, you can monetize a podcast through lead gen, through YouTube AdSense money, and through sponsorships. So if you need help with that, you can go to podpire.com. Angie, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. This is going to be a fun discussion today. So my background is I grew up in farm fields, basically in Minnesota in the middle of nowhere, had some grand ideas. I wanted to travel the world, wanted to start a business, and eventually those things happened, right? You got to keep at it. Career-wise, I got my master's degree in genetics. I was seeing patients as a genetic counselor, and I just love clinical research. I love the idea that, okay, if we do this scientific research, maybe we can create a better drug or a better device or make people's lives better through supplements. And you can't do that unless you do the proper research. There's tons of people out there that will claim their thing works better than everything else, but it comes down to the science. And I wanted to be part of that.
What's the limitation to the science and how could we make science better?
I think it comes down to rigorous science. There's lots of people that will do just an observational study which is helpful. You can see how this patient group responds versus that patient group. But when you actually randomize it, where people don't know what drug they're getting, they don't know the intervention, and then we start teasing out, is it just because you thought you got the drug that you reported you were better, or is it because it really is something that's happening? But there is an entire industry all around the world that is doing clinical trials in a very rigorous manner. So no matter where you are, the regulations are almost all the same, which allows us to work with clients around the world. Australia, India is very popular right now, Canada, US, you name it. But it's a very fun industry to be part of and contributing to the future.
And am I right in saying that most regulations are sort of weak and sometimes even unscientific or slowing down research? Because, for example, the first question I asked you, when it comes to research trials, all it takes is like one patient telling, oh, this drug is going to work, you be prepared. And then the full batch is like sort of convinced. I mean, I'm exaggerating, right? Because they're probably separating them, but
Yeah,
placebo is still very much a thing, and it seems
yeah,
that most of
absolutely.
research like still doesn't fully understand human psychology, and we can't isolate every single elements other than if we would have cameras track them and probably an AI register all the data and make sense out of it. So yeah, that was a very long question, but first, like the
Sure.
FDA and all these organisms, are they efficient? Are they slowing down research? And then how could we
Yeah.
make clinical trials better through AI?
Yeah, so there's a lot of questions in there.
Yes.
Unpack that a little bit. I think there are absolutely brilliant people in the field who have, identified, okay, yes, placebo effect is real. Absolutely, it happens. It may happen to you and you don't even realize it, right? Because you take
Yeah.
this new gummy vitamin and suddenly you're feeling great. Well, it could have been the fact that you were also walking 15,000 steps that day.
Yeah.
So you really have to have the statistical analysis plan done correctly to manage all of those things. You could say, okay, FDA slows things down in a way, or any regulation in any country, right? But on the other hand, we need something there because, as you said, otherwise it would be a massive free for all where everyone's claiming they have the newest, latest, greatest thing. So we have to have some sort of standards that we go by to say, okay, a scientific body is reviewing this, and it seems as though the evidence is overwhelming that, yes, your conclusions are correct. So I believe that there needs to be that there. Um, Can we make it better and faster? Absolutely. And that's where my company comes in and several others who are harnessing AI. So, one of the big issues that I personally like to tackle is that there are many documents required for a trial. 100-page documents after documents after documents that are submitted to the FDA and other regulatory agencies. They have to be perfect, right? If anything is not quite perfect, it's going to get kicked out, delay your research, the whole thing. So, what our company has done is basically created a platform where you answer questions about your research, and then the documents then can create themselves using AI and automation. So, it's much, much faster. We are seeing that it's actually more compliant. They're better documents because, hey, we're humans, we make errors. And overall, it's been going pretty well in shaking up the industry.
Right. And your company precisely, how do you get your clients? And
Mhm.
yeah, how do you make sure that they're happy and that they come back for more?
Yeah. So our clients are pharma, small, medium, big, device companies, life science companies, clinical research organizations, and even academic centers. So some large hospitals, universities that want to do research. My goal is to use the expertise that we have as a clinical trial team to basically be that expert for you. Tell us what your questions are. How do you want to create a trial? What are your outcomes that you're looking for? And then let's create a trial around that to gather the data you need to really support the information that you're trying to get after. Or build it in a way that, okay, if the results aren't positive, you're actually confident that maybe it isn't positive, right? You don't want to be steered down the wrong path either. So, keeping our customers happy is ensuring that we're up with all the latest regulations. We have the experts with the knowledge that can help them along the entire path. So, it allows them to do what they're really good at: develop the drugs, develop the devices, have the hypothesis, see the patients, and we can take care of the documentation for them.
So without you, they would be less scientific and potentially go down the wrong path, or it's an extra layer that they can show to their partners and like, hey, the conclusions are more scientific, if I understand better.
Yeah. So what's hard sometimes is we think, oh, ChatGPT can just write anything. It can. And that's sometimes the problem. It will just write all sorts of nonsense if you don't know how to feed it the correct information. So, yes, we've certainly worked with some who thought, I'm going to do it cheap and we'll just use AI and just write things ourselves, and they suffer. They have delays. People catch them with problems. So I think it's you have to still have that human interaction and that knowledge base to build things out correctly.
It is fascinating to me because I interview a bunch of AI companies, and I would say like 55% are built on the fact that GPT hallucinates. What will happen once GPT will stop hallucinating is my question to you.
Sure, at some point it will happen, but at least in my industry, every single trial is different, every drug is different, every patient is different. And so you're still going to need some sort of intelligence to feed into that chat GPT. It can't just do everything for you, at least for the time being. I mean, who knows where we're all going to be in 10 years? I can't predict that. But I do think if you harness it, and like software companies like we're harnessing that, it's just going to continue to make us stronger as it becomes stronger, but it won't replace us. I'm
Right.
hoping. We'll
Yeah,
see.
and there's layers, right? Like there's the prompting, and there's various layers of filtering to your company. It's more complicated than just that. But my question is pretty much related to that also. Is it mostly a tech company, a SaaS company, or is it mostly humans leveraging your AI? It's sort of agency model that you're serving your clients with.
Well, it's actually both. So we have customers, like let's say very small biotech company, they don't have a full team to do their trial. Like, Angie, can you just help us? Absolutely. We just take it and run with it, create it for them. But then we also have other big companies, like very large pharma, for example. They have an entire team. They just want to make it more efficient. And so they bring it in house and they use the SaaS model for that. So I think there's anywhere. in between that entire spectrum, just depending on the needs of the customers.
Two questions in one. How did you go from academia and corporate to entrepreneurship? And how did you get so fast into AI? Because a bunch of research organizations like you, they're still doing it the old way with the old model, right?
Yeah. So this kind of comes back to entrepreneurship. I think I always had in my mind I wanted my own business, and I have so many ideas. Like, you look all around you every day and you're like, I could do that better. I've always had that drive. So academia is just to lay the foundation and to play the game where it's like, okay, you need to do this. Back in my day, quite a few years ago, this is what you did to get ahead. So I played the game and I did it. And I don't regret it at all, but it did not prepare me for the business world whatsoever. Scientific background didn't prepare me for that. So I just, honestly, I binged podcasts, like yours. I binged books like you wouldn't believe, and just kind of taught myself there and thought at some point this is going to happen. And I took the leap a few years ago after I had kind of like squirreled away a nest egg and thought, all right, if I'm going to do it, now's the time. But obviously, looking back, I do it differently. I would do it on the side. Like, there's a lot more flexibility these days than there was when I fully had to jump and figure it out. So now, yeah, someone with a dream can basically do anything. And I think that's beautiful.
Yep.
And also a little bit scary.
Yeah, well, before you get in, you're not scared, like, this is gonna be fun. But yeah, once you get in, there's so many unknowns, right? And that's what we're scared of as humans. I want to ask you though, like, your scientific background, do you feel you're leveraging it in the entrepreneurial game? For example,
Oh, yeah.
how do you set your yearly goals? Like, are you super scientific and mathematic about it?
Well, I would say so. My scientific background was more like meeting with patients and explaining very complex medical information to them, helping them understand their genetic risk based on their family members. So it was a whole nother area of science that related to communication.
Okay.
So I believe that's absolutely helpful for me right now because I'm
Yes.
explaining clinical trials to people who aren't in the industry very often. Um, what kind of led me down this path and thinking I'm going to take the jump is just all of the opportunity that was there. Yeah.
And your goal setting, how do you set your goals? And
Goal setting is a
how do you
little bit
review your year and so forth?
I definitely review my year end, but I'm a big journaler, like I journal and like, here are my goals and this is where I want to go. I may not do it every single day, but certainly every month I've got goals and I look back on them, reflect what went well, what didn't. Um, it's hard to set goals as an entrepreneur because I find myself saying, "Oh, it's not a problem. Like, we're going to make 5 million in the first year." And then you get into it and you realize there's a lot more up to that. It's not just a simple like, "Okay, we're going to do this launch and the world will know me and use this." You have to build trust and it takes longer. So, um yeah, I honestly do it by gut check and just look back on month after month what we've been doing well. Try to be I really hate the word realistic. I hate it because what's realistic to one person isn't to another. But I try to not make the goals so high that, we get upset that if we don't hit them. I want us to be very, very close.
Yeah, I mean, an entrepreneur with like a 5 million goal and outsourcing that goal to an employee will have like catastrophic results, right? I did that in the past as well. I'm not realistic at all to many, but to
Right.
myself, I am realistic slash extreme, right? And yeah, it's mountains. It's humongous mountains, 5 million, 10 million, 50 million. If you're insane, you might reach these goals. And if you have some luck as well, I compare it to my ultra runs. But yeah, we're like, oh, this is going to be easy. But obviously, we haven't got the sufficient data to prove that it's going to be easy. It's nice to that gives us like motivation, but yeah, I feel the right approach usually, and it's like mixing all the goal settings techniques because I'm into that nowadays with the year almost coming to its end. One approach that I'm using right now is feeding my brain all the data at once, all the OCD trials, the scientific trials, and then letting my gut make sense out of it. And when I say gut, it's mostly my emotions, right? It's like, what would really make me happy? What is the vision that will fire me up? And I had a mastermind today with a bunch of agency owners, and one guy said, "Do you even remember your yearly goals?" I'm like, "No." So you need to like have them in monthly increments, right? And
Yeah.
chop them down. I want to ask, what's next for you and the company? Where do you want to bring it next year?
Yeah, so we're only 15 months in, and for a software, that's like baby steps, right? I spent the first year really developing that, developing the team, getting our offers out there. For this next year, it's all about scaling. Like we're now at the point where it's like, okay, we've got a few customers, they're really happy. How do I find more customers? How do I make them happy? How can we get across the world? I very much I started talking about like my passion for traveling, and it goes the same. I want to have customers everywhere. I want research to be accessible to researchers in Nigeria just as it would be in India as it is in the US. There are brilliant clinicians, researchers all around the world, and this should not be a barrier to entry. So I want to be there for it.
There you go. And I checked some of your plans. I'm curious about the pricing as well, because the one for academic researchers is on the website. So it's anywhere for 89 bucks a month to 400 bucks a month. How much you charge like the big pharma guys?
Yeah, so this is just for like an individual researcher who needs to get something off the ground, right? They want to plan their study, they need assistance, they just want to walk through it, right? And with individual pharma companies, they need massive amounts of documentation. It's not just, I want to look in our medical records and publish something. So that's that kind of like very simple offer that we have on the website. But everything needs to be custom tailored because of the disease, of the drug, of the device, of the regulations we need to follow. So we do it all custom, but we are finding that we're saving them over 70% on costs, and our timeline is 5 days, which is unheard of. Like in general, it usually takes groups months to create these documents. So leveraging time and money, we're hoping to save them a massive amount and get their technologies into the world much faster.
There you go. Let's finish off with a moonshot. How could we drastically accelerate research, for example, fix most cancers in like months with AGI? Like, do you
Ah,
often think about that? Do you often like go into wandering states and visualize an AGI that could fix these by remote labs and massive testing, massive data, massive acceleration? How could we actually drastically accelerate research and
it's
fix
already
diseases?
happening.
Okay.
Just like what we're focused on in documentation in our small little niche, there are companies that are looking back and doing evaluating proteins based on AI. Like, what is the best possible target for this protein to enter the body or to have XYZ outcomes? It's happening. The world is going to be a very different place within 10 years. But that being said, obviously, it brings up those ethical discussions, right? Like, should we all be living forever? And then also, if AI is basically doing almost everything, what's there to live for? Like a lot of us really love to have like a thing. We love our jobs, and especially as like Americans, we kind of define ourselves as our jobs. So I'm really interested to see how that's going to evolve over the next 10 years as well.
I think everyone should live forever. That is, if they're productive to society, and AGI will be able to evaluate that. And I think we'll never get bored because we'll merge with AGI through some kind of Neuralink, and there's no frontiers to this universe. I think it's infinite. I think there's always something to learn. What do you think
Yeah,
about
I
points?
think there's always something to learn, certainly. And the idea of having kind of like this merged neural link type situation, I think it's absolutely possible. And it'll be interesting to see how cultures adapt that, who adopts that, what happens to the people who don't adopt that. It's a wild, wild next 50 years that are coming up.
Yep. Well, thank you for coming on today, Angie. Where can people find out more about you?
Best place is LinkedIn. It's just Angie Schwab, CEO and founder of Easy Research Solutions. So Yep. LinkedIn is just Angie Schwab.
That was